Nature is full of lives so strange they sound impossible, yet every one of them is real. Welcome back to Animal Uncovered. Picture, if you will, a creature crawling along the ocean floor. Its domed shell gleams in the filtered sunlight, its body segmented and armoured. 10 legs propel it forward across the sand. A long pointed tail trails behind, not as a weapon, but as a rudder. To the untrained eye it might seem alien, even prehistoric. And in a sense, it is. This is the horseshoe crab. And while it bears the word crab in its name, it is not a crab at all. It's more closely related to spiders and scorpions than to any crustacean. But what truly sets this animal apart isn't its peculiar anatomy or its misleading name, it's its age. The horseshoe crab is what we call a living fossil. Its body plan has remained largely unchanged for approximately 450 million years. To put that in perspective, horseshoe crabs were already ancient when the first dinosaurs appeared. They witnessed the rise and fall of entire epochs. They survived the mass extinction that ended the age of dinosaurs, and they're still here, scuttling along the same tidal zones their ancestors inhabited before there were trees, before there were flowers, before there was breathable air on land. Today we're going to trace the complete life cycle of this extraordinary survivor, from a single spawning event on a moonlit beach to decades of slow growth in coastal waters. The horseshoe crab's journey through life is one of nature's most enduring success stories. It's a story written not in years but in geological time itself. Part 1. Ancient Origins and Evolutionary Context. To understand the horseshoe crab's life cycle, we must first understand its place in the vast sweep of Earth's history. The lineage of horseshoe crabs extends back to the Ordovician period, more than 445 million years ago. At that time, life on land was limited to perhaps some lichens and primitive plants. The oceans, however, teemed with strange and wondrous forms. The ancestors of modern horseshoe crabs were part of a group called eurypterids, or sea scorpions, some of which grew to terrifying sizes. Over millions of years, the horseshoe crab lineage split off and developed its characteristic rounded carapace and segmented body. By the time the continents were still joined in the supercontinent Pangaea, horseshoe crabs had already perfected their fundamental design. What makes an animal a living fossil? The term, first popularized by Charles Darwin, refers to organisms that have remained relatively unchanged over vast stretches of time, often because they occupy ecological niches that have themselves remained stable. Horseshoe crabs are masters of the shallow coastal environment, the zone where ocean meets land. This habitat has existed in various forms for hundreds of millions of years. And the horseshoe crab's body plan has proven so effective in this environment that natural selection has found little reason to modify it. 4 species exist today. The American horseshoe crab, Limulus polyphemus, inhabits the Atlantic coast from Maine to the Yucatan. 3 other species live in Southeast Asia: the mangrove horseshoe crab, the coastal horseshoe crab, and the tri-spine horseshoe crab. Each follows a similar life cycle, refined over eons. But here's what's remarkable. These animals have survived 5 major mass extinctions. They persisted through the Permian-Triassic extinction, which killed roughly 96% of all marine species. They endured the asteroid impact that ended the Cretaceous. They weathered ice ages and periods of extreme warming. The secret to their survival isn't just their armoured shell, or their ability to breathe both in water and air, though these certainly help. It's their reproductive strategy, their slow and steady growth, and their profound connection to the rhythms of the Earth itself. Part 2. spawning and reproduction. The life cycle of a horseshoe crab begins not in the depths, but in the shallows, on a beach, under a full moon. Each spring and summer, along the eastern coast of North America, an extraordinary event unfolds. When the new and full moons create the highest tides of the month, horseshoe crabs emerge from the ocean in their thousands. They come to spawn. The timing is precise, synchronized with lunar cycles that have governed this ritual since before our ancestors walked upright. The females arrive first, larger and more robust than the males. A mature female can measure up to 2 feet in length and weigh several pounds. She hauls herself up onto the beach, driven by instincts that predate the formation of the very sand beneath her. The males, smaller and equipped with specialized claspers on their front legs, follow close behind. Often, multiple males will attach themselves to a single female, forming a chain of suitors hoping to fertilize her eggs. The female digs into the wet sand, usually just below the high tide line. Using her legs and the pushing motion of her body, she excavates a shallow nest. Into this depression, she deposits clusters of tiny greenish eggs. Thousands of them. A single female may lay as many as 90,000 eggs in a single season, distributed across multiple nests over several tide cycles. As the eggs emerge, the attending male or males release their sperm directly onto them. This is external fertilization, simple and ancient. There is no courtship dance, no elaborate display, just the meeting of gametes in the wet sand, timed perfectly to the rhythm of the tides. Once fertilization occurs, the female covers the eggs and returns to the sea. The males disengage and follow. Within hours, the beach appears lifeless once more, but beneath the surface, sheltered by several inches of sand, a new generation is beginning to develop. The choice of timing is not arbitrary. By spawning during the spring tides, the females ensure that their eggs are deposited at the highest point the ocean will reach. This protects the developing embryos from being washed away prematurely. The eggs will remain buried for approximately 2 weeks, warmed by the sun, bathed occasionally by the advancing tides, and hidden from most predators. But not all. Shorebirds, particularly red knots and ruddy turnstones, time their own migrations to coincide with horseshoe crab spawning. They descend upon these beaches in vast flocks, probing the sand, consuming the protein-rich eggs by the thousands. This predation is not incidental. For many migratory birds, horseshoe crab eggs represent a critical fuel source, a stop on a journey that may span from the Arctic to South America. The relationship between horseshoe crab and shorebird is one of profound ecological dependency, forged over millennia. But despite this predation, enough eggs survive. The female's strategy of producing tens of thousands of offspring is a bet on numbers. Most will perish, but some will endure. Part 3. Eggs and Early Development. Beneath the sand, each fertilized egg is a universe unto itself. Encased in a tough, translucent membrane, the embryo begins to divide. Cell by cell, it takes shape. The development of a horseshoe crab embryo is a marvel of biological engineering. Within days, the cells organize into layers. A primitive circulatory system forms. Tiny appendages begin to bud. The embryo is nourished by a yolk sac, a packet of energy provided by the mother. It needs nothing from the outside world except warmth and protection. After roughly 2 weeks, if conditions are favorable, the eggs are ready to hatch. But they don't hatch immediately. They wait. The trigger is the next set of spring tides, the high water that reaches up the beach and washes over the nests. The agitation of the waves, the change in salinity, the physical disturbance. These are the cues that tell the embryos it's time. When the tide arrives, the eggs rupture. Out emerges a creature that looks nothing like the adult it will eventually become. This is the trilobite larva, so named because it resembles the long-extinct trilobites that once dominated the seas. The larva is tiny, barely 1/4 of an inch long, translucent and delicate. It has a soft, rounded carapace, a segmented body, and stubby legs. No tail spine yet, no hard shell. The larva is immediately swept into the surf. This is its first test. It must orient itself, find the seafloor, avoid being stranded. Thousands upon thousands of larvae tumble through the waves, most destined to become food for fish, crabs, and other predators. The ocean is not a nurturing place, it is a gauntlet. Those that survive begin to settle. They sink to the bottom, often near eelgrass beds or in muddy shallows, where food is abundant and predators are marginally fewer. Here, the larvae begin to feed. They consume algae, small worms, and organic detritus. Their mouths are located between their legs, an arrangement that allows them to grind food as they walk. Within days, the larva undergoes its first molt. Molting is the process by which a horseshoe crab sheds its exoskeleton to grow. The larva secretes enzymes that dissolve the inner layer of its shell, then splits the old shell along a seam and wriggles free. Underneath is a new, slightly larger shell, soft at first but hardening within hours. This first molt is critical. It marks the transition from a free-swimming larva to a bottom-dwelling juvenile. With each successive molt, the horseshoe crab will grow, develop more recognizable features, an inch closer to adulthood. But this process is not quick. It will take years. Part 4. Juvenile growth and molting. The juvenile phase of a horseshoe crab's life is defined by one word: patience. After settling to the seafloor, the young horseshoe crab enters a period of slow, methodical growth that will last for nearly a decade. During this time, it will molt as many as 16 to 17 times. Each molt is an opportunity for growth, but also a moment of profound vulnerability. In the weeks leading up to a molt, the horseshoe crab's body begins to prepare. A new exoskeleton forms beneath the old one, soft and pliable. Minerals are reabsorbed from the old shell to conserve resources. When the time comes, the horseshoe crab seeks shelter. It wedges itself into the sand or beneath a rock, away from the open water. The molting process itself is laborious. The old shell splits along the front edge, between the carapace and the body. The horseshoe crab then pulls itself forward, extricating its legs, its book gills, its tail spine, all while completely soft and defenseless. The process can take hours. If disturbed, if attacked, the horseshoe crab has no recourse. It cannot flee, it can only endure. Once free of the old shell, the horseshoe crab is larger, but its new exoskeleton is as soft as wet leather. Over the next several hours it will absorb water, swelling to expand the new shell before it hardens. During this period, it remains hidden. Predators, fish, larger crustaceans, even other horseshoe crabs, are drawn to the scent of a molting animal. Many juveniles do not survive this stage, but those that do emerge slightly larger, slightly more robust. With each molt, new features develop. The tail spine or telson lengthens. The compound eyes become more complex. The book gills, those feathery respiratory organs tucked beneath the abdomen, expand in surface area. The horseshoe crab is not simply growing, it is transforming. During these years, the juveniles remain in shallow nursery habitats. They burrow into the sediment during the day to avoid predators and emerge at night to feed. Their diet expands to include clams, worms, and small crustaceans, which they crush using the spiny bases of their legs. They're both scavengers and hunters, opportunistic and patient. Growth is not uniform. It depends on temperature, food availability, and individual genetics. In warmer waters, horseshoe crabs grow faster. In colder climates, the process slows, but regardless of conditions, it is never fast. A horseshoe crab may take 9 to 12 years to reach sexual maturity. By the standards of most marine invertebrates, this is an eternity. Why so slow? The answer lies in the horseshoe crab's strategy. Rather than racing to reproduce, they invest in durability. A slow-growing animal can allocate more resources to building a thick shell, to developing robust organs, to surviving the countless hazards of the ocean. Speed is not always an advantage. Sometimes, endurance is everything. Part 5. Adulthood and Daily Life. When a horseshoe crab finally reaches sexual maturity, it has become a creature built to last. The adult carapace is hard as stone, a dome of chitin and calcium that can withstand immense pressure. The body beneath is a marvel of biological engineering, housing a suite of sensory and physiological systems refined over hundreds of millions of years. Consider the eyes. A horseshoe crab has 10 of them, distributed across its body. The 2 large compound eyes on either side of the carapace are the most obvious. Each contains roughly 1,000 photoreceptor units called ommatidia. These eyes are remarkably sensitive to light, capable of detecting even faint changes in brightness. But they are not built for detail. Instead, they excel at motion detection, allowing the horseshoe crab to sense the movement of predators or potential mates. In front of the compound eyes are 2 smaller median eyes, which help regulate circadian rhythms and detect UV light. On the underside of the body, near the mouth, are additional photoreceptors. Even the tail spine contains cells sensitive to light. In essence, the horseshoe crab's entire body is aware of the presence and quality of light. This is crucial for an animal that navigates by the cycles of day and night, tide and season. Adult horseshoe crabs spend much of their time on the seafloor, in waters ranging from a few feet to depths of around 75 feet. They are most active at night, when they venture out to feed. Their diet consists primarily of mollusks, worms, and algae. They're not fast. They do not chase prey. Instead, they plow through the sediment, using their legs to uncover buried food, then grind it between the spiny bases of those same legs before passing it to their mouths. Their blood is unlike that of almost any other animal on Earth. It is blue, coloured by a copper-based molecule called hemocyanin, which transports oxygen. But it is the blood's immune properties that are truly extraordinary. Horseshoe crab blood contains specialised cells called amoebocytes, which clot rapidly in the presence of bacterial toxins. This mechanism protects the animal from infection in the bacteria-rich environment of coastal waters. But it also serves another purpose, one that humans have only recently come to appreciate. Horseshoe crabs are not social animals. They do not form groups or cooperate. Each individual is solitary, wandering the shallows alone. Yet during spawning season, they gather in vast numbers, drawn by the same ancient cues. This is the one exception to their otherwise isolated existence. Between spawning seasons, adult horseshoe crabs may migrate. Some move offshore during the winter, seeking deeper, warmer waters. Others remain in estuaries and bays year-round. Tagging studies have shown that individual horseshoe crabs can travel considerable distances, sometimes returning to the same beaches year after year to spawn. How they navigate remains partially mysterious. though it likely involves a combination of chemical cues, magnetic sensitivity, and an innate awareness of tidal patterns. Part 6. Longevity, Aging, and Death. A horseshoe crab that survives to adulthood can live for 20 to 40 years, though some individuals may live even longer. This is an impressive lifespan for an invertebrate, matched by few other arthropods, but longevity comes with its own challenges. Unlike many animals, horseshoe crabs do not have a fixed adult size. Even after reaching sexual maturity, they continue to molt, albeit less frequently. Each molt allows for additional growth, and older individuals tend to be larger. However, molting becomes increasingly dangerous with age. The larger the animal, the more difficult it is to extricate itself from the old shell. Elderly horseshoe crabs sometimes die trapped within their own exoskeletons, unable to complete the molt. Age also brings wear. The carapace, though tough, accumulates scars. Barnacles and algae colonize the surface, adding weight and drag. The tail spine may break or become damaged. The eyes, sensitive as they are, begin to cloud. Movement slows. Feeding becomes less efficient. Predation, which diminishes after the juvenile years, never disappears entirely. Sharks, sea turtles, and some large fish will opportunistically consume adult horseshoe crabs, but more often, death comes from stranding. During spawning events, some horseshoe crabs become trapped on the beach, flipped onto their backs by waves or other crabs. The telson, that long-tail spine, is designed to help the animal right itself, but on soft sand, or if the horseshoe crab is weakened, it may fail. Exposed to the sun, unable to breathe, the animal dies within hours. Disease and parasites also take their toll. Flatworms, leeches, and certain bacteria can infect horseshoe crabs, weakening them over time, and there are the accumulated costs of reproduction. Each spawning event requires enormous energy. Females in particular invest heavily in egg production. After years of repeated spawning, the body begins to fail. When a horseshoe crab dies, it does not go to waste. Its carcass becomes a feast for scavengers. Crabs, worms, and bacteria break down the organic matter, returning nutrients to the ecosystem. The hard shell may persist for years, eventually fragmenting into the sediment. In this way, even in death, the horseshoe crab contributes to the environment that sustained it. Part 7. Ecological importance. The horseshoe crab is not merely a survivor. It is a cornerstone species, an organism whose presence shapes entire ecosystems. We have already touched upon the relationship between horseshoe crabs and migratory shorebirds. Each spring, species like the red knot undertake one of the longest migrations in the animal kingdom, travelling from the southern tip of South America to the Canadian Arctic. The journey is grueling, covering thousands of miles. These birds time their northward flight to coincide with horseshoe crab, spawning along the Delaware Bay and other key coastal sites. For the red knot, the horseshoe crab eggs are not just a convenient meal, they are essential. The birds arrive exhausted, depleted from weeks of flight. They must double their body weight in a matter of days to have enough energy to complete the journey and breed in the Arctic. Horseshoe crab eggs provide the concentrated fat and protein necessary to achieve this. Studies have shown that when horseshoe crab populations decline, red knot populations decline in tandem. The two species are bound together across hemispheres and millions of years of evolutionary history. But the ecological significance of horseshoe crabs extends beyond shorebirds. Their eggs and larvae are consumed by fish, crabs, and other marine organisms. Juvenile horseshoe crabs serve as prey for larger predators. Adult horseshoe crabs, through their burrowing and feeding, aerate the sediment and recycle nutrients. They are ecosystem engineers, shaping the physical and biological structure of the habitats they occupy. Even the surfaces of their shells provide substrate for other organisms. Algae, sponges, and barnacles attach to horseshoe crab carapaces, creating miniature ecosystems that travel with the animal. Some small fish and invertebrates use horseshoe crabs as mobile refuges, hiding among their legs and gills. The horseshoe crab's role in coastal ecosystems is therefore multifaceted. They are prey, predator, host, and habitat modifier. Remove them, and the consequences ripple outward, destabilizing food webs and altering ecological processes that have persisted for millennia. Part 8. Human connection and medical significance. For most of history, humans and horseshoe crabs coexisted with minimal interaction. Native peoples of the Atlantic coast collected them for food and used them as fertilizer. Early European settlers did the same. But in the latter half of the 20th century, a discovery transformed the relationship between our species and theirs. In the 1960s, scientist Frederick Bang noticed something unusual. When horseshoe crabs were exposed to certain bacteria, their blood clotted almost instantaneously. Further research revealed that the amoebocytes in horseshoe crab blood react to endotoxins, molecules found on the surface of gram-negative bacteria. This reaction is so sensitive and reliable that it became the basis for a medical test called the Limulus amebocyte lysate assay, or LAL. The LAL test revolutionized medicine. Before its development, testing for bacterial contamination in vaccines, intravenous drugs, and medical devices was slow and unreliable. The LAL test is fast, accurate, and extraordinarily sensitive. It can detect endotoxins at concentrations as low as 1 part per trillion. Today, every vaccine, every injectable drug, and most medical devices are tested using horseshoe crab blood. To obtain this blood, horseshoe crabs are harvested from the wild, brought to specialized facilities, and bled. A needle is inserted near the heart, and approximately 30% of the animal's blood is extracted. The crabs are then returned to the ocean. The process is designed to be non-lethal, and industry estimates suggest that mortality rates are around 15%. However, some studies indicate that mortality and sublethal effects, such as reduced spawning success, may be higher. This creates an ethical and ecological dilemma. On one hand, horseshoe crab blood has saved countless human lives. On the other, the practice places additional stress on populations already threatened by habitat loss, overharvesting for bait, and climate change. In recent years, synthetic alternatives to LAL have been developed, most notably recombinant factor C, or RFC, which replicates the clotting mechanism without requiring live animals. Adoption of these alternatives has been slow, hampered by regulatory inertia and industry resistance, but the momentum is building. Beyond the biomedical industry, horseshoe crabs face other human-driven pressures. Coastal development destroys spawning beaches, water pollution degrades their habitats. They are still harvested in significant numbers as bait for eel and conch fisheries, though regulations have been tightened in many regions. Climate change alters ocean temperatures and sea levels, potentially disrupting the precise environmental cues that govern spawning. The American horseshoe crab is currently classified as vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Asian species face even greater threats, with some populations in steep decline. Conservation efforts are underway, including habitat restoration, harvest limits, and public education campaigns. Some communities have embraced horseshoe crabs as symbols of resilience and natural heritage, organizing volunteer efforts to flip stranded animals during spawning season. The question we must grapple with is this: can we find a way to benefit from the horseshoe crab's remarkable biology without driving it toward extinction? The answer will depend on our willingness to prioritize long-term ecological health over short-term convenience, to adopt alternatives where they exist, and to recognize that the value of a species cannot be measured solely in economic terms. Part 9. Closing Reflection. The horseshoe crab has been on this planet for 450 million years. Our own species has existed for perhaps 300,000 years. In the vast expanse of geological time, we are newcomers, barely a flicker. And yet, in the brief moment we have occupied this Earth, we have reshaped it more profoundly than perhaps any other species in history. The horseshoe crab, meanwhile, has simply endured. It has survived asteroid impacts and ice ages, the rise and fall of entire orders of life. It has done so not through cunning or speed, but through consistency. Its life cycle is a study in patience. 10 years to reach maturity, decades of slow growth, reproduction timed to the moon and the tides, a body plan refined to such precision that evolution has found little reason to alter it. When we watch horseshoe crabs emerge onto a beach under a full moon, we are witnessing an event that has unfolded in, essentially, the same way for longer than grass has existed, longer than flowers have bloomed, longer than any terrestrial vertebrate has walked the earth. We are in that moment touching deep time, but we are also witnesses to fragility. The horseshoe crab's endurance is not a guarantee of immortality. The changes we are imposing are happening within decades, faster than the horseshoe crab's slow reproductive cycle can accommodate. If we lose them, we lose more than a source of medical reagents. We lose a living connection to the ancient past, an ecological keystone upon which countless other species depend, and a reminder that survival is not about dominating the world, but about finding one's place within it, and holding that place with quiet, unyielding resolve. The life cycle of the horseshoe crab is insane not because it is bizarre or extreme, but because it is so utterly, beautifully simple. Spawn, hatch, grow, molt, feed, survive, reproduce, endure. These are the rhythms that have carried this creature through eons, and if we are wise, if we are careful, they will carry it through many more. The horseshoe crab has outlived trilobites and dinosaurs, empires and ice sheets. The question before us now is whether we will ensure that this ancient mariner continues its journey, as it has for nearly 500 million years, under the light of the moon and the rhythm of the tides. That choice, unlike the horseshoe crab's fate through the ages, is entirely in our hands. The natural world never stops surprising us. This has been Animal Uncovered. Comment which insane life cycle you want to hear next.